Welcome to the Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday around 12 noon on LinkedIn's new live platform. The point of the show, as you know, is to talk to today's leaders about their secrets to success. We talk to CEOs, we talk to best-selling authors, we talk to people who are doing really interesting things in the world, and we want to find out what they're doing that can help us all be better. So that's the point of the show. The fun part is that it can be interactive. The only way that happens, though, is if you ask questions. So please do ask questions. Our guests are here to help us, to help, like I said, to make us better so we can learn from them. So ask questions, and we do really encourage that. Now, we're simulcasting this on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, all with the help of Social Live and that platform. That really helps us be able to go out to all those different places. Now, my promise to you is to bring you the very best people. So I think I've done that today. I've got Thomas Donohoe. Thomas is the CEO and founder of the Level Agency, which is a top digital marketing firm in the United States. He's a fellow Inc. 500 alumni and member, I guess we could say that. He's an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year winner, Diamond Award for Outstanding CEOs, and he's author of the book CEO's Digital Marketing, The CEO's Digital Marketing Playbook. Thomas, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
So you're fleeing a hurricane and having to.
Yeah. The curse and blessing of being in one of the greatest cities in the Atlantic. So Charleston's wonderful. So sometimes you have to evacuate.
I understand that, being from there myself. So. But I do appreciate you. I know that you had a busy morning, and
Sure.
So I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. You talk about the reason for starting the Level Agency was that you felt that customers deserve better on the digital marketing side, that the big agencies weren't really offering the best service. What do you mean by that? What was your experience?
So
I know you worked in the big agencies for a bit.
Sure. No, I certainly don't think that in the business sense we're curing cancer. What I did see prior to starting the agency, I was the guy on the client side spending millions of dollars for healthcare companies, for banks, for schools, for large institutions. My job and responsibility of the teams I worked with, again, on the client side, I spent absurd amounts of money deploying dollars and trying to get customers. I worked in sometimes the B2B, but more often the what I'll call high value B2C world. So goods and services that are expensive, 5 figures and up. And so when you're not in an e-commerce world, when you've got things to sell that are, again, very expensive, you don't just drive someone to a website, to Amazon, and have them put something to a shopping cart and click and purchase within 5 minutes. The things that the companies where I worked, what I was selling were, they took days, weeks, sometimes months, and infrequently years for a prospective customer to turn into a customer. And I spent, I think, if I had to guess, maybe in excess of $100 million before I started an agency on the client side. And it is certainly not that I think we at Level Agency or me personally that I'm doing anything new. What I did see, to directly answer your question, is that not just a large minority, but the vast majority of small, nimble digital shops that would have the word digital in their title or in their mission statement, and even the global leaders, and I'm talking about the biggest fish in the media world, what I would see as their client spending absurd money, so I should get the best services. And trust me, I was spending, my budgets were, when you have an 8-figure budget annually, you should get the best services from a digital marketing standpoint. Right. And what I saw year after year after year, and I hate saying through no fault of their own, but the outcomes, either the outcomes weren't phenomenal from an actual ROI standpoint or a marketing ROI standpoint, or most importantly, the tactics, the stuff that I knew was the fundamentals, like the things that you need to do I don't care, any company in the world, the stuff that you should be doing every day of the week, twice on Sunday, often weren't being done. And if they were being done, sometimes they were being done poorly from an attention to detail standpoint. And this is not me as the marketing guy on the client side hiring, the scrappy little local shop just trying to do good work. This is me hiring a global search engine marketing company or a global social agency. And the frustration that even as a big fish from a client standpoint, again, I had a lot of money often to spend, that even with all of the money in the world, you'd still get, from a sophisticated digital advertising standpoint, and this is 2007, 2009, 2010, 10 years after Google launched Google, I'm still seeing, for really expensive companies, not very sophisticated approaches. And I can get into why I think that happened, but that was the reality. So one of the drivers for starting Level Agency wasn't to break new ground with inventing new kinds of digital advertising. It was just to make sure that when we did when I took someone's money, I knew at minimum, the best practices in 2010, 15, 2019, and 2020 and beyond, that we're at least doing everything we have to do. And ideally, we're going above and beyond, and we're doing more sophisticated things. But at minimum, that, again, this month,
right,
they're across every search engine and social network, and in web design, in creative, there are best practices. And so the primary thing was just make sure those things are done.
I know as a CEO, and I know myself, and I know as a consultant, because I'm now a business advisor and have my own business advising firm and work with a lot of clients and see a ton of different issues that the clients are having. One of the things that really sticks out to me, and one of the reasons I want to have you on the program, is I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding or not understanding what is direct response marketing, what is digital marketing. I mean, and that you have to have a strategy for this, right?
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't really just fall under the marketing department. I mean, you've got to have. Yeah. It's not the same.
Yeah. I think there are two worlds. The textbooks say there are two worlds of marketing, and I agree. There is direct response marketing and there is brand marketing. I'm not saying that brand marketing isn't important. I'm not saying that.
Right.
That's that. But what I am saying is that nearly always the conversations in social media, the books, the topics, the keynote speeches, the very famous people in marketing that are talking about things, it's nearly always about the exciting, sexy stuff like, let's have content go viral and let's build your brand and let's make a lot of content every day, every hour. And I'm hearing, and this is not this year, it's not just this year, it's the years and years and years prior. And I'm here, and this is, again, not as an agency owner back in the day. This is as a person that if I didn't drive more business that month to my employer, I would get fired. And so I think in the world of marketing, we are completely ignoring, or nearly entirely ignoring, the men and women, whether you're an executive at a company and it's your responsibility from a P&L standpoint, or you're on a marketing team and it's your team's job, or you're a small business owner, you're a sole proprietor, so everything is your responsibility.
Right.
These human beings, which I think are most people, don't have time to wait for months and years for something to go viral. They can't waste time every day building content and building their brand.
Right.
I know so many more people. Again, they could be marketers, they could be executives, or just general business professionals. If they sit down with the shareholders, or the CEO sits down with the shareholders, or the marketing team sits down with their VP, and every month they come to the table and they can't talk about quantitative progress, new leads, new customers, more revenue that's tied to the advertising. If you can't have those conversations, you're going to get fired. So it was all sort of a frustration, right? Because that's why you get paid money. And the near how allergic we are as content creators. I mean, I wrote a book, and there's hundreds of books out there about marketing, and men and women that get keynote speeches, the marketing professionals, the thought leaders in the marketing world. We don't talk about dollars out and customers in. We don't talk about the really unsexy. It is not sexy, but the stuff that every day can make you money and make leads come in and leads turn into customers. They're there. Google's been talking about Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, best practice web design. These things are there. They're not hidden. I'm not the Indiana Jones of digital marketing. I didn't go spelunking and find the treasure. You have to deploy these things every day and then make sure they're done well. So not just check the box. And how allergic we are as thought leaders and marketers. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. So it's up to people like me to talk about what's important. The problem is it's not sexy. No one wants to talk about this stuff, but guess what? This is the stuff that every day, this is the rubber on the road that makes businesses run, that gets customers. The stuff about building brands and creative journeys, and you as it's important, but I think we should be talking about it that much and talking about the boring direct response stuff that's 24/7, 365 that makes businesses run. We need to be talking about this stuff this much, and the create content and build your brand and all this really fun stuff. Right. It's fun. We should be talking about this much versus this. And it's like this. We never focus on, how often do you hear people get on a stage and talk about trade name search? Never. Zero. I mean, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one talking about it, but that's a problem. Everyone should be talking about it until everyone does it. I tell you what, I haven't done the study. That'll be maybe the next book. I'm going to do a study, and I'm going to look at the Fortune 1000. And I'm going to definitively, quantitatively show that the Fortune 1000 companies, I'd bet my car that 90% aren't running what we as digital marketers call trade name or brand search, which is like not wearing pants to work. It's like if you're an accountant, if you don't pay your taxes. It's like if you're a lawyer working for a company, if you don't have them sign NDAs for stuff. It's that basic. And I would bet you, and maybe not 90%, I bet a large majority of the Fortune 1000 companies aren't running trade name search, let alone the other 500,000 businesses that are making more than $1 million a year in revenue. Most aren't doing it.
That's
insane.
You said something. I bet you a bunch of CMOs and CEOs are scratching their head and saying, "What did he just say? What does that mean? I have never heard that term."
Yeah. So let me put it this way: not just chief marketing officers, which I think, with love in my heart, and I understand the why. The reason why most men and women that are executives in marketing or executives in business don't know, and I think if you do know the difference, you're going to hear what I'm going to say, and you'll be like, "Man, you are out of your mind." And I'm telling you, you're wrong. I would bet 80% of the executives that I talk to, who are marketing executives, couldn't tell me the difference between SEM and SEO, which is insane. That's like me asking my parents if they know who the Beatles are, and them saying like, "Nope, I've never heard of them." It's that bad. Number one. Number two.
There's a movie about it, I think, but
yeah, well, that's in my next life. So, I'm not trying to be just prejudicial and incendiary. I'm saying this is so important that leaders, not just CMOs and VPs of marketing, CEOs, and this is why I wrote the book, the men and women that run companies, whether you're a CFO or your operations or you're in marketing or you're at the top of the food chain, if you don't know the 25,000 level view of marketing, and you just know buzzwords, I guarantee you, not you personally, but under your watch, there is so much money being set on on fire because the real boring stuff that people go to conferences and don't hear, or they read books not about branding and not reading books about the boring stuff. But I guarantee your house is on fire. And because no one went to school for this stuff, it's the year, it's the year that we live in, and there are still less than a dozen schools, in my opinion, a dozen that today offers a bachelor's degree in digital advertising that I think is legit. We're 20 years after Google became Google. We're 20 years. Kids that were born when Google launched are in college now, and there are people aren't birthed or they're not educated around digital advertising. So it's no surprise why men and women who are running companies in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s, that's not their pedigree. But what I'm saying is, if you don't know the difference between SEM and SEO, if you don't know not just the value, but if you're not running trade name search for your company, I question every marketing decision you're making, not because I'm smarter, just because that is, from a data standpoint, it's as certain as the sun will rise tomorrow. That's the lowest hanging fruit from a net new customer acquisition standpoint, period. And so if you're not running that, and if you don't know the value proposition, that I guarantee you're not doing, again, this is high value B2C. It can also be used in e-com and definitely in B2B. I'm guaranteeing you're not doing lead nurturing correctly, that you're just relying on your sales teams, which is wrong.
Right.
Sales teams are awesome, but marketing should support them. Digital marketing should support them. I would bet that your web environment, your landing pages, if you even have them, probably don't adhere to best practice standards, and you're hemorrhaging 10, 15, 30% on an ROI standpoint. These are all the boring things. These aren't sexy, but typically, because the men and women who run companies, because digital marketing is new. It's a mystery. It's newer. And so what happens is those men and women rely upon agencies to govern themselves. And that's the problem, because you've hired an agency to be experts. Hey, agency, are you doing this thing that I don't really understand that well, that granularly? I can ask the first question, are you doing this? And they're like, absolutely. And guess what? Even if they are doing it, which sometimes they're not, but even if they are doing it, they're typically, what we found, they're doing an okay job. And in 2019 and 2020, with things like paid search advertising and paid social on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, if you're not like a first degree black belt, you're bleeding money. So again, there's a bunch of reasons why, but that's the reality. I mean, and it's like, I know the cliche, but at some point, like, I didn't rain on everybody's parade. I've just, I'm trying to talk about how to find the best umbrella.
Right. Well, what is
right?
So let's get into this a little bit then. How do you know? I'll tell you what. Let's back up. What are the core four you talk about in the book?
Yeah. Okay. So this is if you work for a company, if you run a company, if you are the C-level, or you're in charge of P&L, if you're an executive, if you're a marketing employee, or if you're a sole proprietor, like for those four people. So basically anyone except for the interns.
Mm-hmm.
And if the company you work for or own wants new customers, and actually I know it sounds crazy, there are a few companies that don't. There are some organizations that they don't worry about customer generation. My example, the conversations I just had today, I talked to a gentleman that is a partner of a private equity fund or firm. They don't really need more customers. I mean, there's a few I don't even say verticals. There's only a few companies on earth that when asked, do you need more customers? The answer is no. So let's say 99.9 with a bar over it. So if you're listening to this, I guarantee your company wants more customers.
Yeah.
Cool. So if the company wants more customers, again, I didn't invent any of this stuff. I just am one of the people that doesn't mind talking about the boring stuff that works versus the sexy stuff that is really, really fun to pay attention to. super fun to talk about in meetings, if meetings can be fun, but these are the things that are low hanging fruit. And so I will, and at some point, let's, when I have much deeper pockets, I will actively bet people to prove that one of these four things don't make good ROI, because they definitively do. So the first is, I'll just go through them at a high level and then we'll get into them. So the first is running trade name, or what's called brand search. So trade name search.
What
the
is
second it?
What is?
Well, so trade name search is advertising on Google, Bing, and what will formerly be not known as Yahoo, but Google, Bing, and Yahoo. So the search engines.
Okay.
And you, again, this does the same thing for if you have a location or headquarters or presence outside of America. It's still paid search engine marketing. So it's SEM, which is not SEO. SEO is completely different. And by the way, SEO is important, but it's not the first thing you should do.
Right.
Okay. People that think that SEO is a lever for more customers are 1,000% wrong. It's just not. It's a valuable tactic. It's good strategy. It's content and a few other goods, marketing and content and relationship strategies. But at the end of the day, it is not a dollars out and results in. So it's important, but people oversell SEO all the time. So I'm talking about SEM.
Right.
And if you don't know the difference between SEO and SEM, that's another hour-long conversation. And there's plenty of information online. Just Google SEM versus SEO.
Essentially,
so talking about SEO.
It's getting your name at the top of searches. That's okay.
So when someone Googles the name of your company,
right,
and another word or words in the query that highly indicates that they would be a good prospective customer, you want to bid on that phrase. Again, this is what's called trade name search. Right. Again, it's paid search engine marketing, so it's SEM. Now, number one, you have to be doing this, and number two, you have to do it correctly. As an example, I'll use my company as an example, Level Agency. So when someone Googles in America, Level Agency Services, I want to bid on showing that person my ad. And I'll get into the why you do this, but I'll get into first an example of how you screw it up. So again, it's not just about doing it, it's about doing it correctly.
Okay.
As an example, when someone Googles Level Agency jobs, well, that's someone likely looking for a job with my company, which is fine, but I don't want to pay money for that person. So as an example of one of the things you have to do when you run trade name search, and again, this is boring stuff, but it's super important. When you do this, and someone Googles the name of your company and jobs, you want to put that word jobs on what's called a negative keyword list. So when someone Googles the name of your company and jobs, you don't show up for that result. So that's an example of how you need to do trade name search, but you have to do it correctly. You can't just phone it in because you're going to set a ton of money on fire. And I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients and peers and friends and executives I've seen be like, look, man, we ran search engine marketing. My favorite is, we ran Facebook ads and they didn't work, so it doesn't work. And it's like, man, I will bet you my car, and next week I'll bet you my house that if you do it correctly, it'll be a profitable endeavor. Don't blame the fact that the agency you're working with or the internal team, and this is with love in my heart, because it's not easy stuff, which is why I have a company, and people like me have companies that do the kind of work that we do, because it's not that easy. But you have to do it correctly. And if done correctly, the four things that we're going to lay out, and trade name search is the first one, if done correctly, it's profitable. I would be hard pressed to meet any executive at any company or any marketer who's like, we ran it well, and it didn't work. I absolutely disagree that could ever happen in 2019, if done correctly. So again, it's called trade name search. And the reason this is important, so that's the how not to mess it up as one example. The reason why it's so profitable is, number one, it's at the very bottom of the marketing funnel. So like when people are window shopping versus in the buying, it's lower in the funnel. But if you rely on Google when someone Googles the name of your company and a service line or a product that you offer, you're letting Google decide what to show. Number one, your competitors can put their company in front of yours. So your competitors can steal your rightful place, number one. Number two, if you rely on what organic results or SEO to have a result there, you're letting Google choose the ad copy, choose the words that someone sees, and most importantly, Google's going to send them to your homepage or a product page. You don't control that experience, which we'll get into, which is another tactic, which are called landing pages. That's setting money on fire. And number three, it's an acreage play. If you bid, and by the way, it's insanely cheap. And that's, I should have started by saying that. Every one of these things I'm going to talk about, these four things have three things in common. They're insanely cheap. They're pretty easy to build. I mean, you can use an agency, but often you can do them to an extent in-house without hiring people like me. And number three, they have the best return on marketing investment of any tactic. Cheap, easy, and really profitable. I like those three things. So what I'm talking about is dirt cheap. Compared to your entire marketing and sales efforts, all the collateral and events and your employees and the sales and marketing teams, all this stuff I'm talking about, it's crazy cheap. And there are some problems. You can't really, there's these things often aren't that scalable, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what's the block and tackling that every day, every month, every year is going to be, it's not going to be 80%, it might be 10, maybe 20, might be 5, but it's a consistent pipeline of cheap new customers.
I like it.
And that's what I'm talking about.
What you're saying is it's just the fundamentals. It's just the fundamentals. That's it.
The thing I just talked about, trade name search, paid search, it's going to have its 20th birthday this year. This thing is 20 years old. I'm not even talking about some advanced machine learning solution and all the other buzzwords.
Right.
I'm talking about something that's like 20 years old, but people aren't doing consistently. And if they're doing it poorly.
Yeah, but
in no other industry, like any other thing that companies do, human resources that you need HR, you need legal, you need accounting, you need sales. In no other like tranche of business activity are things so messed up and not done correctly at a fundamental level. And I'll say the same thing. It's like if your accounting team or your accounting agency didn't file your taxes. I'm being that serious. It's bad. And it's like if your lawyer, so we have a general counsel here. It's if my amazing general counsel at my company was like, you know what? Don't worry about that NDA. You don't need them. It's that simple.
It's malpractice on the marketing side. I mean, okay. I mean, but I think most people just, they really, this goes, it's not any more complicated than your legal department or your HR department but for some reason people think it is, right? And like you said,
you don't need to have, here's the best news. To do baseline block and tackling marketing, what we call the core four, you don't need to have a CPA, you don't need to have a law degree. We teach young men and women, 21, 22, 23-year-old men and women who are downstairs right now in my office and in offices around the world in good agencies like mine. We teach these people to do it in 3 or 4 months to be entry-level, good, again, the young in their career professionals. You can do this in your company, or you can find an agency for not much money to do the block and tackling stuff. It's not rocket surgery. You don't need a JD. You don't need a CPA. You need someone, and I'm telling you, like many years ago, I used to be a calculus tutor. I mean, I like math. I'm telling you, the hardest the math gets is division. Not even kidding. So that's the first of the core four. Trade name search engine marketing is unquestionably the lowest of hanging fruit.
What's number 2?
Number 2 is retargeting on social media and in banner ads. So in the world of digital advertising, we don't say banner ads, we say display advertising. It's the same thing, it's a banner ad. So the example I'll give you of retargeting display or retargeting banner ads on social networks and on regular banner ads. The easiest example that I think everybody watching this will have an understanding of, because they've been hit by it, is if you've shopped for a car in the past 10 years, maybe longer, because the automotive industry, even though they're really, really behind the curve with some things, the automotive industry has been one of, if not the most advanced in this tactic. And the tactic is this. So let's say I go on cars.com, or I go on my local Ford dealership, and I look at a pre-owned, year, make, model. The days and weeks to follow, I could be checking my Gmail. I could be on a website that has nothing to do with automotive, nothing to do with cars. I could be on a flower website or a spatula website.
Right.
Because I visit spatula websites often. But you'll see a banner ad. Again, this is if you've been shopping for a car recently. You'll see a banner ad. Typically, it's a rectangular or a square one, with 300 by 250, or one kind of in the middle. And it'll oddly have the exact year, make, and model of the thing that you were shopping for, but it'll be for another dealership, or maybe a pre-owned or a used car dealership that's within your zip code.
Right.
Well, that's really, and actually it's a fairly advanced form of banner ad retargeting that I think everyone listening, unless you're in e-commerce, and unless you're in automotive, unless you've got a lot of inventory, showing someone the exact thing they were looking for actually isn't the easiest thing from a display or banner advertising standpoint. But for every other company out there, it's really, really easy. Let's go back. It's really, really easy. It's really, really profitable, and it's easy to set up. So retargeting ads, you basically cookie your website, and when someone visits any page, your home page, your product page, your services page, if you've got physical locations, the page about that brick and mortar location versus another, or any other page that's got unique content. Mm-hmm. And as that person, so let's say I go on a bank's website, I go on their savings account page, not their checking account page.
Yeah.
I should be, in the next days and weeks to follow, maybe one a day, so you're not bombarding people.
Right.
And that's just, by the way, the same thing with trade name search. You have to do it, and you have to do it correctly. So it's not just about checking the box. So you show people about one ad a day on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and Facebook's the easiest example, or in what are called display ad networks or banner ad networks. Google runs one. It's incredibly easy to use. It's, by the way, the same interface as you're running trade name search. If you want to start out with a fairly basic level of retargeting banner ads.
Okay. And
you show someone an ad based on the page or product or service that they already visited. It's not rocket surgery. Okay. And here's why you do it. It's crazy cheap. It's some of the best ROI in the game. And it's easy to set up. You don't need an agency. And so nothing here that I'm talking about is particle physics. It's boring stuff, but this is what is another, just that tactic alone. Is it 50% of your new customers? No, it's 3%, it's 5%, it's whatever percent, but it's cheap, it's incredibly effective, and you can probably do it without hiring someone like, one of my coworkers. So again, that's another thing that, like, by the way, that's been
acquisition is way cheaper than the others.
It's insane. Like, how's that TV, print, radio spot going for you? What was the ROI on that billboard? Like, I didn't ruin traditional media, and I don't even hate traditional media. You know what I hate? I hate traditional media prices and the lack of accountability and the lack of tracking and the lack of optimization. But when billboards get cheap enough, I'll buy them. When TV spots get cheap enough, I'll buy them. We actually manage some local TV through digital channels in my agency. I don't hate the old school. I just hate most of what the old school can't do. And if I hate one thing, I hate that people are still spending money in traditional media and they're not maxing out the profit you can get from the digital channels.
Right.
And it's not that I like Facebook better than a billboard. I just like the ROI on Facebook, and the fact that people aren't spending 90% of their budgets in digital advertising. We come across clients, they're spending 20, 30, 50, 70% in traditional advertising. You're setting money on fire. And again, I didn't make it rain. I'm just trying to talk about the best umbrella.
What I can love about it is you can track it, right? I can't track the
And like
billboard. I can't.
And even if, and, you know, and you can sometimes, if you have a unique 800 number, sure, you can do it. Every time I've pulled a report, and let's say I've pulled, I'm in my early 40s, I've probably pulled 7,000 reports from 200 different clients in industries and verticals. I've never once seen traditional advertising come within an order of magnitude of the cost per acquisition, which is tied to ROI. So if I can generate a customer for $1,000 in Google or Facebook, it'll cost $10,000 in traditional.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't invent the reality. I report on it. That's what the data shows. In every industry, in every company, it's truth. So anyways, the second thing is retargeting banner ads.
Number three?
It's not rocket surgery. Number three is what we'll call lead nurturing. So it is for what we'll call high value B2C. So B2C industries that their product or services more than $100 for high value, and definitely B2B, without question B2B. And you can even do this in in e-commerce, but it's more about customer nurturing, not lead nurturing, because you can turn a customer into a customer within 10 minutes by driving them to Amazon or a shopping site, and they'll put something in a shopping cart and they'll buy it. So the thing I'll talk about, you can nurture current customers the same way that a high value B2C company, again, expensive goods and services for consumers, and B2B companies nurture leads and help that lead become a qualified sales lead and help that qualified sales lead become a client. Again, this is not to replace a sales team. There's nothing that's going to go toe to toe from an efficacy standpoint than a good business development professional. But you use, and this is one of the 4 or 5 tactics we'll use internally, and there are others. But as one example, you use Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You take all of the email addresses. It's called, in Facebook, they call it CAT, Custom Audience Targeting. Facebook CAT. LinkedIn has their own acronym, but it's basically the same thing. It's the same thing. So on these platforms, excuse me, you take, let's say you have 100 new leads. You're a B2B company. You've got 100 new leads a month, 50, whatever, 20, 1,000, I don't care. You take the email addresses of those individuals and you upload them into Facebook and you upload them into LinkedIn. It then matches, and this again, not that I'm saying is rocket surgery. You upload those email addresses into social media platforms.
Okay. And
to the extent you can do this with banner ads, and we'll get into like some telephony stuff in a second, but just use social networks that after that human became a lead, they've, for whatever reason, they're now in your database. They're in your CRM. They're in that sales process. You're trying to turn them from a lead to a qualified sales lead to turn them into a customer. Whether you're, again, high value B2C, a bank, a school, a healthcare company, or you're selling B2B products and services, doesn't matter. You target those human beings because every social media company has access to an email address. Now, you're not going to get everybody, but even in B2B, if I give you 100 business email addresses, LinkedIn and Facebook will match 40%, which is insane. That means even in Facebook, which everyone thinks is, well, Facebook is for social lives and LinkedIn's to sell stuff. It's completely wrong. You need to use Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. You upload your email addresses, whether it's B2B or B2C, into those platforms, and every day you show that actual human an ad. And that ad has to be different than, and here's how to do it correctly. The ad that you show them isn't the same thing as what got them in the door in the first place. You show them an ad that talks about your value proposition, talks about other customer satisfaction things, talks about how good your company is overcoming objections, your core value proposition. It's retargeting, but it's through social media and it's using email addresses on a human-to-human basis, the actual people. So it's like shooting very dumb ducks in a very small barrel from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
And again, it's insanely cheap. It's insanely effective from an ROI standpoint, and from how difficult it is to do that on social media. I personally still I bother my media team. I do still use Facebook and LinkedIn and Google to do some of our advertising, just so I don't turn into the executive that doesn't know what he's talking about. So I don't turn into a CEO of a digital agency that doesn't know about digital marketing.
Yeah, keep sharp, right?
Which I, kind of a big pet peeve. It's like a man or woman who runs a law firm not being a lawyer. You'd be surprised how often that happens in the marketing world. But what you're going to find is it's the easiest thing to do if you're going to stack rank the difficulty. Because often there's some more advanced things in social media that are really that are hard, that are scalable, but they often require an agency to do. But nothing here that I'm listing is anything that would demand an agency. Ideally, you'd use one because they're not going to mess it up if they're good at what they do. But you don't need one. You don't need one for trade name search. You don't need one for what we call Facebook cat or social media nurturing. It'd be nice. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. So that's the third thing. So nurturing leads, or if you're in an e-com environment, nurturing current customers to come back and buy more or have a higher average order value. Mm-hmm. These things are cheap, these things are effective, and these things are easy to set up. So that would what we'll call lead nurturing through social media. But Facebook calls it a cat campaign. So that's the third thing.
And the fourth?
The fourth is the place where you send all of these people. So the fourth is, I want to talk about landing pages. Landing pages, to an extent, used to be called microsites. And the bottom line is this. If you are able to send a person to a website, paid advertising on search engines, paid advertising in social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, paid advertising in banner ads or display ads, what we call them, email campaigns, anything where you can actually send a person to a website and you're trying to turn that person into a customer or a lead, mm-hmm. or if they're a return customer, encourage them to buy something else. If you are sending that person to your homepage, or if you're sending that person to your main marketing website, but like the product page of that marketing website, and your main website, and you're not using landing pages, you're setting money on fire. It's that simple. Landing pages, and well, here's the why. Landing pages have one job. And again, landing pages are, if you Google open checking account, or Google cheap car insurance, any of those companies, I hate doing this without actually going through all of these, but I'd bet that nearly every paid ad, when you click on it, takes you to what's called a landing page. And a landing page has one job. It's to turn a visitor into a lead or a customer or a conversation. That's its only job. It's to provide enough information that's really relevant to that exact product, and ideally for that exact customer type. So when you advertise, you don't just advertise an exact product or a location or a service. You're advertising to a specific human being. So even though you and I are very similar, like we're both middle-aged white guys in the business world, and I live in Charleston, you came from Charleston, like you and I are very similar, but you would still advertise based on your profession versus my profession,
right?
A good or service a little differently. I mean, if you're getting pretty advanced with advertising, you'd still advertise, you versus me differently. You'd send us to a landing page, but maybe based on maybe where I live, or maybe a psychographic profile. Our Facebook profiles, our LinkedIn profiles are different. You like different stuff than I do, and maybe not, but you probably do. And so those small things will make our two web experiences, they should be different. And that's the beauty of the 21st century, and that's one of the tent poles of why digital is superior to traditional. You can weaponize for efficiency the small differences in humans, and you can talk to them like they're important individuals versus, lucky strikes, they're toasted. And that's the same slogan for like the world. Not the slogan or the call to action or the value proposition for you versus me, even though we're really similar, is still going to be different, let alone, my value proposition versus a female executive or versus someone with a completely different psychographic profile, or someone older or younger, right? Or in a different kind of company. Right. So the landing pages, A, you have to use landing pages, and B, They have to be tailored to the exact person, not just your product. So yes, you advertise product A, you're going to drive them to a landing page that talks about product A, but it has to be unique to the person as well. And so it's using landing pages. And again, I know that it's not rocket surgery, but man, so many companies don't use them. They drive people to their homepage and they're wondering why digital advertising doesn't work. Well, you're not doing it right.
How do you tailor a landing page for me versus you? I mean,
so that's going to be,
you could have 100 different landing pages for one product.
Sure. If we're going to simplify this, you've got your landing pages for search engines, and your search engines are based on categories of queries. And so that's more the landing pages that are going to be for your Google ads and Bing ads. They're going to be specific to like your products and your locations and your services, really, really granular. So you're going to get into, if you're running a SaaS company, the exact solution that software is going to solve for. If you're selling hardware, this line of hardware versus that, or if you're in Charleston versus New York City versus LA versus San Antonio, you're obviously going to have a very community specific image of that landing page. So it could be the same product, but it might be a picture of like the backdrop of San Antonio versus Pittsburgh, right? Wow. So landing pages for search engines are typically about where and what you're selling. Social media, because you have access to both LinkedIn and Facebook, they've got dozens and dozens and dozens of amazing data points that clearly say that I'm different from you. And you should take those to heart. As an example, and I know it sounds like small examples, but in terms of not just marital status, but for some goods and services, your family composition. Are you married with kids? How many kids do you have? Are you, have your kids moved on? Are you 65 and with your partner in your house after the kids left the coop? I mean, are you an 18-year-old kid who's going to go to college? Like the family composition, just the visuals. And I don't care if you're a B2B product or you're B2C. The background image affects how people respond to your landing page. And they'll decide based on those visuals if they want to submit their information or make a phone call or chat with you. And if those visuals, we might not be talking about a 60% swing, but if you spend enough money and if you're engaged in business in the 21st century, if I say, look, if you optimize your background image, you can get 9% lower cost per acquisitions, it's important enough to do. So nothing here I'm saying, I think are like tectonic plates shifting from importance, but every one of these things, not even like micro optimizations, 5-10% gains in efficiency, it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. I mean, absolutely. That's I know we're getting on.
So those are the four things. So those are the core four things.
We're getting on the edge of our time, and I hate that because there's so much more to sort of dig into. I want to look at social real quick. Watching Kristen Ruby says, Thomas and Rhett, hey Kristen, how are you? Thank you for being. I'm glad I'm one of your favorite people, and I'm glad Thomas. I guess we're two of our favorite people. That's awesome. Thank you. Kristen says that you are the Indiana Jones of digital marketing. Not to sell yourself short there.
Good. You're right. I'm glad I picked a very not lofty icon. That's good. I'll shoot lower next time.
Brian Schulman, thanks for joining us. Let me see, Emily, you've got all right. So thank you, Brian, for joining us. We've got a bunch of comments, but anyway. So one final question. Before I let you go, I know you've got to get on with your day. What's and I'll need to have you back so we can cover more of this because I didn't get into how you structure your department. I thought that was actually really helpful. How you structure a sort of your campaigns and that sort of thing. I think we didn't get into that today, which I would have liked to have gotten to. But we didn't talk about the advanced 8 tactics, which is a whole nother longer conversation but they can buy the book and find out more. We'll let you talk about that in a second. But the last question I have for you is, what's the best advice you ever got? And from who?
the best advice, both business and personal. Someone told me over and over, it's never as easy as you think, and it's never as bad as you think. So I know that's a corollary to the very frequently said, it's never as good, it's never as bad. I don't really like that saying, because I do think sometimes life and business, if it's really good, it actually can be awesome. So I hate like when people are like, well, it's never as good as you think and it's never as bad as you think, because I think kind of that shaves off some of the top end of happiness. Because sometimes, you know, when you get a good win at work or at home, family, like actually, no, like don't think that it's not that good. Like just, you know, I would say, yeah, I'm okay with, I'm okay sucking the marrow from anything that's really good. I do agree with the other side of the coin, where it is never as bad as you think. So someone told me a long time ago, it's never as easy as you think, and it's never as bad as you think. And I think both of those things are very true. And it's never as easy to think would be my example, or, you know, from a business development standpoint, you know, you never count the revenue until the money's in the bank, or you never count a partnership until, you know, after the papers are signed. I would say, yeah, it's never as easy as it's never as easy as you think it's going to be, but it's never as bad as you think.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up. I think that's good advice. And thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon on the Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. If you like the program or love it, give it a like or share, so that your network can benefit from these conversations. And if you'd like the Power Lunch to come to your conference or event so that we can do a live broadcast, we'd be happy to make that happen. So just get in touch with us on the website, powerlunch.live, or you can get in touch with us through LinkedIn. Now, again, thank you for spending your time with us. You're why we do the show. And we'll see you tomorrow. We've got another great lineup the rest of this week. So please do join us tomorrow at 12 noon.